Welcome back to the Pro Ticker Deep Dive.
It's great to be here.
We are recording this in early February 2026, and I have to say, the world looks a little different this morning than it did just 48 hours ago.
A little different is an understatement.
If you've been watching the wires, or really even just, looking up at the sky, you can feel a shift.
It definitely feels like the ground has shifted under our feet. Or maybe more accurately, the orbital plane has shifted. It feels like we just watched the entire board game get flipped over.
And all the pieces just slid into one massive singular pile.
Exactly. That's the perfect image.
That is the perfect image for it.
Right.
Because the news cycle is absolutely paralyzed right now. The headlines are screaming one thing: consolidation. We're talking about the entire landscape of aerospace, artificial intelligence, and telecommunications all being mashed together.
Into one massive entity.
Yep, one entity.
The Muskonomy.
The Muskonomy. It's no longer a joke or a meme from X. It's a formal corporate structure. It's on paper. SpaceX has officially acquired xAI.
And by extension, you have to remember, that means they've also acquired the platform formerly known as Twitter, which was already under the xAI umbrella.
Right. So we're looking at a deal that fundamentally reshapes the tech sector. But this isn't just about a merger. We aren't here to just read you the press release.
No, we have to go deeper.
I need to unpack this rumored $1.25 trillion valuation. We need to talk about the killer app that's sort of hidden in the company memos.
The orbital data centers.
This concept of orbital data centers. It sounds like pure sci-fi.
It does, but when you look at the energy markets down here on Earth, it almost starts to look like a necessity.
And we also need to get into the weeds of the infrastructure wars. That's SpaceX versus Amazon Leo.
Yeah.
And the really big regulatory implications of this EchoStar deal that kind of flew under the radar.
And of course, the big one, the clock is ticking on Mars.
The 2026 transfer window opens later this year.
It is the do-or-die year for the Mars program. There's no getting around that.
Exactly. So just to set the expectations for you listening, we are pulling from a massive stack of sources today. We have financial reports from Bloomberg and CNBC. We've got the regulatory filings from the SEC that just dropped this week.
We have industry analysis from places like Via Satellite and Analysis Mason.
And we have some leaked internal memos. These are from both SpaceX and Amazon, and they're dated right up to yesterday, February 7, 2026.
So yeah, we have gone through the fine print, so you don't have to.
Let's jump right into Section 1, the trillion-dollar merger. The headline is simple enough. SpaceX buys xAI. But the numbers are, well, they're aggressive.
Aggressive is a very polite way to put it. I'd call them astronomical.
Break down the valuation for us.
Okay, so the combined entity is being valued at approximately $1.25 trillion. Now, to put that in perspective for everyone, that is roughly the GDP of a country like Indonesia.
Wow.
It's bigger than the market cap of most of the legacy tech giants just a few years ago.
And how does that slice up? Because SpaceX was already the heavyweight champion of the private markets. It wasn't exactly a small company.
Not at all. So if you look at the deal structure, the way they've outlined it, SpaceX, that's aerospace, Starlink, and the launch business, is valued at roughly $1 trillion.
$1 trillion for the existing rocket and internet business.
Okay, right. Then you have xAI, the artificial intelligence startup, valued at around $250 billion.
$250 billion for xAI. That is $250 billion for a company that is, what, 3 years old?
3 years old and has, frankly, burned through cash like a wildfire. It's a staggering number. And the structure of the deal here is absolutely crucial. It is an all-stock transaction.
Okay, so no cash is changing hands to actually buy the company itself.
Exactly. It's not like SpaceX is writing a check. What's happening is xAI becomes a wholly owned subsidiary of SpaceX. Shares of xAI are just being swapped for shares of SpaceX.
So it's a consolidation of equity. You're bringing all the chips onto one side of the table.
Precisely. It tidies up the cap table and aligns all the investors under a single corporate banner.
Okay, so the question everyone on the street is asking is why? Why merge a profitable, dominant rocket company with a cash-incinerating AI company?
Right.
I mean, I get that Elon Musk owns both, but usually you try to keep your hardware business separate from your software business. What is the official strategic rationale?
Well, the way Musk is pitching this is as vertical integration on a civilization scale. He calls it, and this is a direct quote, creating the most ambitious, vertically integrated innovation engine on and off Earth.
On and off Earth. That's the part that sticks out.
That is the key phrase. If you think about traditional vertical integration, you go back to Henry Ford owning rubber plantations in the 1920s so he could control his tire supply.
Right, controlling the supply chain.
It's all about supply chain. But here, the supply chain isn't just rubber and steel. The supply chain is the entire technology stack of a future society.
Okay, let's unpack that stack then. What are the layers we are actually looking at in this combined company?
Okay, well, let's start at the bottom, at the physical layer. You have the transport layer. That is the rocket Starship and Falcon. Their job is to move atoms from the ground into space.
Moving mass. Okay.
Then, just above that, you have the connectivity layer. That's Starlink and the new direct-to-cell capabilities. Their job is to move bits around the planet and back down again.
So you move the atoms up, then you move the bits through them.
Exactly. Then you get to the intelligence layer. That is xAI and the Grok AI models. Their job is to process all those bits, to find patterns, to generate insights, to create new things.
And then there's the final layer, the distribution layer for that intelligence.
Right, and that's the information layer. That is X, the platform formerly known as Twitter. Because xAI had already acquired X, SpaceX effectively absorbs the social platform too, so it's a closed loop.
A completely closed loop. Yeah. You launch the satellites with your rockets. The satellites carry the data for your internet service. Your AI processes the data, and then your platform distributes the resulting information to the public.
It's an end-to-end system for information and infrastructure. There are no outside dependencies.
It's an empire in a box.
But
I want to push back on this grand innovation engine narrative for a second. Because when I look at the balance sheets, or the estimates of them anyway, I see a different story. I see a story about cash flow, a much more practical story.
You're looking at the financial rescue narrative, and frankly, the numbers completely support that view. It's hard to argue against it.
Let's just look at the cash burn.
Yeah.
xAI is in a brutal fight. It's competing with Google DeepMind, with OpenAI.
Yeah.
That is an expensive game to be in.
It is an incredibly, unbelievably expensive game. The estimates we're seeing from multiple sources suggest xAI is burning somewhere around $1 billion.
A month.
$1 billion a month. Just to keep the lights on and the models training. You have to remember, they're acquiring GPUs, which are still supply constrained and insanely expensive. And then there's the electricity cost to actually train these massive Grok models. The OpEx is just out of control.
They're incinerating cash.
Completely incinerating it.
And then you turn around and you look at SpaceX.
And SpaceX is the polar opposite. By late 2025, they had become a fortress, a financial fortress. They brought in an estimated, $15 to $16 billion in revenue?
Which is a big number, but it's the profit that's the kicker.
That's the part that blows everyone away. On that revenue, they posted an estimated $8 billion in profit. The margins are just incredible.
So Starlink is basically a money printer at this point.
Starlink is a global utility with utility-like recurring revenue, but it has tech-like margins. It is printing cash hand over fist.
So the cynic, and I think I'm the cynic here, says, this isn't about vertical integration. This is about using the profitable rocket company to bail out the failing AI company.
That is the #1 criticism you're hearing on Wall Street today. It looks a lot like moving money from the left pocket, which is stuffed full of Starlink cash, to the right pocket, which has a massive billion-a-month hole in it called AI training costs.
And it's not the first time we've seen this pattern with Musk companies, is it? There's a history here.
No, not at all. Critics are pointing directly at the Twitter acquisition as the blueprint. Musk overpaid for Twitter $44 billion, and its value just cratered.
Right.
Then his new company, xAI, acquired Twitter, which some analysts argued was just a way to move that debt and that messy equity around. And now SpaceX, the profitable golden child, is acquiring xAI.
It's a lineage of risk transfer. You're just moving the risky, over-leveraged assets under the umbrella of the one truly safe, profitable asset.
Exactly. And we can't ignore Tesla's role in this whole ecosystem either. I mean, just last month, Tesla invested $2 billion into xAI.
Despite the shareholder lawsuits, I thought they were trying to block that.
Despite significant pushback from major institutional investors. So you have public money from the car company flowing into the private AI company, which is now being bought by the private rocket company that wants to go public.
It is a very, very tangled web of capital.
What is a financial Gordian knot?
It sounds like financial engineering as much as it is aerospace engineering.
Yeah.
But Musk, of course, would argue the vision is bigger than the balance sheet. You're talking about building a Kardashev 2 level civilization.
Right. And for listeners who aren't deep into astrophysics, the Kardashev scale is a way of measuring a civilization's technological advancement based on how much energy it can use.
So type I is planetary.
Type I uses all the energy available on its planet. Type 2 can harness the entire power of its home star.
And Musk is basically saying, we're done with type Y. We have to go to space to find more energy.
Effectively, yes. He's making the case that terrestrial limits on power, on cooling, on physical space are too constraining for the scale of AI that he wants to build. And that right there leads us directly to the killer app of this whole merger.
Section 2, Orbital Data Centers. This is the part of the leaked memos that really just stopped me in my tracks, because it addresses a problem that we are all feeling down here on Earth, which is the energy crisis being caused by AI.
It is the bottleneck of the decade, there's no question. We are hitting a physical wall. Data centers in, say, Northern Virginia or Ireland are consuming as much power as medium-sized cities.
We're seeing grid instability because of it.
Grid instability, water shortages because of the massive cooling requirements. We are fundamentally running out of planet to power this stuff.
So the Musk solution is, and this is another quote from the memo, it's always sunny in space.
That's the line. And it's true from a physics standpoint. If you put a solar array in the right orbit, you don't have night. You don't have clouds. You have access to constant high-intensity solar flux 24/7.
Okay, so you've solved the power input problem. You have near infinite energy.
Yeah.
But what about the cooling? Because I remember my high school physics classes. Space is cold, sure, but space is also a vacuum. And a vacuum is a great insulator. It's how a thermos flask works.
You have hit the nail right on the head. This is the critical nuance that all the headlines are missing. People hear space and think giant refrigerator.
Right. Oh, it's cold, so the computers won't overheat.
But in a vacuum, you can't use fans. There's no air to blow. You can't use water cooling towers because there's no air to carry the heat away. Convection, the way we cool most things on Earth, simply doesn't work.
So how do you cool a supercomputer in a vacuum? It has to get rid of its waste heat somehow.
You have to use radiative cooling. You have to emit the waste heat as infrared light. You radiate it away as photons.
And that requires what? Big antennas?
It requires massive surface areas, giant radiator panels, kind of like the wings on the International Space Station, but much, much larger. They have to be huge to be effective.
Which means giant, heavy structures.
Exactly. And that is why this is a SpaceX play. This isn't something you can do with a small rocket. The memo outlines a plan, and the numbers are they're hard to believe. They plan to launch a constellation of 1 million satellites to act as these orbital data centers.
Hold on. Stop. 1 million.
1 million.
Not a typo.
Not a typo. 1 million individual data center satellites.
The scale of that is I can't wrap my head around it. The current Starlink constellation is, what, 9,000 satellites? And that already seems like a lot.
It's a completely different paradigm. Let's look at the mass involved. The memo says they want to be launching 1 million tons of hardware to orbit per year.
1 million tons a year.
Right. Now, for context, let's look at 2025. That was the busiest launch year in human history. The entire planet, every nation, every company, China, Russia, Europe, the US, all combined, we launched about 3,000 tons to orbit.
3,000 tons total.
Total. And Musk wants SpaceX alone to launch 1 million tons.
So he wants to increase the current global lift capacity by a factor of, what is that, over 300?
Roughly, yes. He wants to turn Starship into a conveyor belt to orbit, just a constant stream of mass heading up. He's talking about generating 100 gigawatts of AI compute capacity in orbit annually.
100 gigawatts. That's the equivalent of, like, 100 nuclear power plants.
Correct. And the beauty of it, from his perspective, from an environmental and logistical perspective, is that it has zero terrestrial footprint once it's up there.
You aren't straining the Texas power grid. You aren't draining the Colorado River for cooling water.
You're just harvesting raw sunlight in a vacuum. The operational costs in terms of terrestrial power and water are zero.
Musk's prediction in the memo is incredibly bold. He says that within 2 to 3 years, the lowest cost way to generate AI compute will be in space, not on Earth.
And that brings us full circle back to the merger. Why does SpaceX need to own xAI? Because xAI provides the demand for all that compute. They design the chips, they design the models that will run on these orbital servers.
They're the anchor tenant.
They're the anchor tenant for this orbital infrastructure. And why does xAI need SpaceX? Because SpaceX is the only company on the planet that can physically get that mass to orbit.
It's the launch bottleneck.
Yes.
He owns the only road to this new frontier.
It is the ultimate strategic moat. Imagine you're Google or your OpenAI, and in 3 years, you realize that space-based compute really is cheaper and more powerful. But your biggest competitor owns the only trucking company that can get your servers there.
You are in a strategic chokehold. You can't compete.
You're completely boxed out.
It turns Earth into a dumb terminal. The brain literally moves to orbit.
That is the long-term vision. But while Musk is looking at the stars and planning these, mega constellations, there is still a very dirty, gritty battle happening right here in low Earth orbit for basic internet connectivity.
Section 3. The infrastructure wars.
Starlink versus Amazon, or as they rebranded themselves in late 2025, Amazon Leo.
Right. They moved away from the Project Kuiper name. I guess they were trying to freshen up the brand, get away from the delays.
A new logo doesn't fix the laws of physics, though, and the physics of getting to orbit are not on their side.
So how is that rivalry looking here in early 2026? Is it even a rivalry?
It is. It is not much of a rivalry right now. It is a domination. Let's just look at the raw snapshot. As of today, Starlink has over 9,000 active satellites in orbit.
9,000.
And they have about 9 million subscribers paying them every month. The revenue run rate is somewhere between $12 and $15 billion.
Okay, that's the SpaceX side. What about Amazon Leo?
They have fewer than 200 satellites in orbit.
9,000 versus 200. That is not a gap. That is a canyon.
It is a canyon with a moat at the bottom. And Amazon is just now starting their production launches. They have an Ariane 6 mission, a big one for them, set for February 12th, so just a few days from now. But they are massively, catastrophically behind schedule.
I saw that in the FCC filings. Amazon actually had to go to the regulators recently with their hat in their hand.
They did. And this is a really crucial detail for any investors watching Amazon. Their original FCC license, the one that lets them operate in the U.S., required them to deploy half their constellation, so that's 1,600 satellites, by July 2026.
Which is 5 months away.
5 months away. And they have, being generous, maybe 200 up there. There is no physical way they can hit that deadline.
So they asked for a delay.
They filed a formal request for a 2-year extension on that deadline.
What was their justification? The dog ate my satellites. What did they tell the FCC?
It was effectively, yes, the equivalent of that. They are blaming rocket shortages. They cited launch bottlenecks and general industry disruptions.
Which is just deeply ironic considering the primary industry disruption is SpaceX launching so many rockets that nobody else can keep up.
The irony goes so much deeper than that. Because Amazon is so desperate for launch capacity to even try to catch up, they have been forced to buy launches from SpaceX.
Wait, really? Amazon is paying Elon Musk to launch their competitor satellites.
Yes. They bought a block of 3 Falcon 9 launches. So Jeff Bezos' company is writing multi-million-dollar checks to Elon Musk's company to launch the satellites that are supposed to put Starlink out of business.
That has to sting. That has to be a humiliating conversation in the Amazon boardroom.
I cannot imagine. They're also using United Launch Alliance, ULA, and Arianespace in Europe. But those legacy providers just haven't been able to scale up their launch cadence. That Ariane 6 launch on the 12th is critical for them, but it's putting up, 30-something satellites?
A drop in the bucket.
Starlink launches more than that every single week, sometimes twice a week.
So what is Amazon's strategy here? They can't win on coverage. They can't beat them on speed to market. What's the pivot?
The pivot is that they are giving up on the consumer for now. The internal Amazon memos we've seen indicate they are focusing everything on an enterprise preview.
So they aren't trying to sell to the guy in a cabin in Vermont anymore, the rural broadband customer.
Not yet. They are going after governments, shipping companies, big logistics firms, oil and gas exploration. They are trying to sell service level agreements, SLAs, guaranteed reliability, guaranteed uptime.
So they're trying to lock in the high-margin corporate clients before Starlink completely eats that market too.
That's the plan. But long-term, Amazon still has a pretty powerful card left to play. The ecosystem.
The Prime Bundle.
The Prime Bundle. Yeah. They want to leverage the Fire TV, the Echo devices, the whole Prime membership apparatus. The goal, eventually, is to subsidize the hardware and undercut Starlink on price.
So imagine a world where you sign up for Amazon Prime Platinum or whatever they call it, and they just ship you a free satellite dish with your order.
Get free 2-day shipping and free global internet. That could be a very compelling offer for consumers, but it's a long way off. They have to get the satellites up first. And right now, gravity is winning that fight.
Speaking of winning, let's talk about another move SpaceX made to just cement their dominance. This is Section 4, the EchoStar Spectrum deal. This one kind of flew under the radar because the xAI merger was so huge. But the telecom analysts I follow are losing their minds over it.
As they should be. This is a massive, massive deal in the telecom world. SpaceX is acquiring EchoStar's spectrum assets, specifically the AWS-4 and H-Block licenses, for a cool $17 billion.
$17 billion. So that's not a small acquisition.
No, it's real money. And the payment structure is fascinating. It was 50-50 cash and SpaceX stock. So EchoStar is getting $8.5 billion in cash and $8.5 billion in pre-IPO SpaceX stock.
And SpaceX is helping with their debt too?
Yes, that's the kicker. SpaceX also agreed to pay $2 billion of EchoStar's existing debt interest. It was a complete lifeline.
Sounds like a forced sale.
It absolutely was. EchoStar was drowning. They had over $26 billion in debt on their books and were starting to miss interest payments. They were staring down the barrel of bankruptcy. SpaceX swooped in and bought the family silver.
But why spend $17 billion on invisible airwaves? What does this spectrum actually do for SpaceX?
This is the key. It enables direct-to-cell. This is the holy grail for satellite communication. Starlink doesn't just want to beam internet to a pizza box-sized dish on your roof. They want to beam it directly to the phone in your pocket.
With no special hardware. Just my regular iPhone or Android device.
Exactly. But to do that legally and to do it without interfering with the existing cellular networks, you need specific, high-quality mid-band spectrum. And that is what EchoStar had and what nobody else was willing to sell.
So this basically solidifies their partnership with T-Mobile then?
It cements it into a formidable alliance. T-Mobile and SpaceX have been partners on this technology, but EchoStar owned Boost Mobile. By buying this spectrum, SpaceX creates what the analysts at Analysys Mason are calling a ubiquity moat.
A ubiquity moat.
Meaning they have the physics, the satellites flying overhead, and now they have the legal licenses, the spectrum rights, to provide coverage where literally no one else can. If you are in a cellular dead zone anywhere in the U.S., your phone will just switch over to Starlink's network.
Wow. But there's a huge regulatory consequence here too, right? For years, the U.S. government, the DOJ, and the FCC have tried to keep 4 big wireless carriers alive to promote competition and keep prices down.
That dream is effectively dead now. EchoStar, through its acquisition of Dish Network, was supposed to be that 4th facilities-based carrier. By selling their prime spectrum assets to SpaceX, they are officially bowing out of the infrastructure race.
So we are cementing a 3-player market in the U.S.
It's Verizon, AT&T, and this new powerhouse, the T-Mobile SpaceX alliance.
So SpaceX isn't just an aerospace company or an AI company anymore. They are, for all intents and purposes, a major U.S. telecom carrier now.
Vertically integrated rockets, satellites, spectrum, AI, the whole stack.
It is relentless. But let's look away from Earth for a moment, because all of this, the money, the spectrum, the AI Musk, claims it's all in service of one ultimate purpose, Mars. And that brings us to Section 5, the critical 2026 transfer window.
This is the real heartbeat of the company. You have to understand orbital mechanics to understand SpaceX's financial timeline and its sense of urgency. You can't just fly to Mars whenever you feel like it.
The planets have to align.
Literally. Earth and Mars swing into an alignment that allows for a fuel-efficient transfer. It's called a Hohmann transfer orbit, only once every 26 months.
And the next window of opportunity is late 2026.
Later this year. And that's why this is what everyone inside the company calls a do-or-die window.
So what is the plan? Are they sending people this year?
No people yet. That's the next step. The plan for this window is to launch approximately 5 uncrewed Starship missions to Mars.
5 ships. That's a fleet. An armada.
It is, and the objectives for this first fleet are incredibly ambitious and incredibly difficult. First and foremost, they have to validate the landing capabilities. This is by far the hardest part of the whole mission.
Taking a building and landing it on another planet.
You have to take a ship the size of a skyscraper, enter the Martian atmosphere at 17,000 miles per hour, and somehow land it softly and vertically on its landing legs.
Without making a new crater on Mars.
Preferably. And the atmosphere on Mars is just... it's tricky. It's very thin, so parachutes don't work well for something this heavy. But it's just thick enough to burn you to a crisp on the way down if you get it wrong.
And that brings us to the heat shield problem.
The heat shield is the Achilles heel of the entire Mars architecture. Musk was quoted in a recent interview saying, "No one has ever developed a truly reusable orbital heat shield, and the problem is worse for Mars than it is for Earth."
Worse. Why is it worse?
Because the Martian atmosphere is about 95% carbon dioxide, CO2.
Right.
At the extreme temperatures of re-entry, that CO2 breaks down and becomes highly reactive. It's chemically aggressive. It can literally eat away at the silica tiles of the heat shield.
Yeah.
So they aren't just fighting heat, they are fighting a chemical attack at the same time.
So if even a few of those tiles fail, the whole ship burns up.
And if the ship burns up, the entire timeline collapses.
Okay, let's play out the scenarios here. Scenario A, success. The ships land.
If even one or two of those uncrewed ships land safely later this year or early next, the plan is to send the first crewed flights in the next favorable window, which is 4 years later in 2030.
Boots on Mars in 2030.
That is the aggressive, best-case scenario target.
Okay. Scenario B, failure.
If they crash. If the heat shields fail, if the landing legs buckle, you can't just fix it and try again next week. You have to wait 26 months for the planets to align again.
So a failure this year pushes crewed missions to at least 2032.
2032, or maybe even 2034. It's a minimum 2-year penalty for every major failure. And in the financial world, in the world of IPOs and investor expectations, a 2-year delay on your core mission goal is an eternity.
That explains the urgency. It explains the merger. They're trying to front-load all the capital they can to survive a potential failure and the resulting delay.
They are buying insurance against the laws of physics.
That's a great way to put it. And they're also sending robots, right, on these first flights?
Yes. The plan involves deploying Optimus humanoid robots on these 2026 ships.
The Tesla robots.
The same ones. The idea is to have the robots act as the advance team. They would exit the landed starships, set up basic infrastructure like deploying solar panels, and crucially, go out and locate and verify deposits of water ice.
So they find the fuel station before the humans even leave Earth.
If the robots can confirm the water source, the human crews know exactly where to land and that they'll have the resources to make propellant to come home.
It is just incredible to think that while we are sitting here arguing about interest rates and mergers, there are actual robots being prepped to go mine ice on Mars.
It certainly puts things in perspective, and they did get some good news recently on the legal front. A U.S. judge just dismissed a major environmental lawsuit against the FAA regarding the Starship launches from Boca Chica.
That was the lawsuit about the wildlife refuge, right?
Yes, and that was a major regulatory hurdle that could have grounded the entire Mars fleet. That hurdle is now cleared, so the path to the launch pad is open. It's just the physics that are still in the way.
And physics is a tough opponent. But speaking of high stakes, let's talk about the final piece of this puzzle, the financial event that everyone on Wall Street is whispering about. Section 6, the IPO.
It's the initial public offering. The rumors are intensifying daily that SpaceX is preparing to go public in mid-2026.
The timing is suspicious. June 2026 is what I'm hearing.
It aligns perfectly with Elon Musk's birthday.
Of course it does. He never, ever misses a chance for a meme or a bit of the theater.
He really doesn't. But the numbers they're talking about are deadly serious. The valuation target for the IPO is rumored to be $1.5 trillion.
$1.5 trillion. That would be the biggest IPO in human history. Bigger than Saudi Aramco.
By a significant margin. And the market sentiment right now is just fascinating. If you look at the secondary market, that's where private shares are traded between employees and accredited investors. Shares are trading around $550 right now.
But I heard the market is effectively frozen solid.
It has. It's what they're calling a liquidity lockup. The holders are refusing to sell. If you own private SpaceX stock right now, you are holding onto it with a death grip because you are anticipating a massive IPO pop.
Why sell for $550 in a private deal if the public frenzy might drive the price to $700 or $800 on day one?
Precisely. Everyone is holding out for the public offering.
You know, it feels like there's a bit of meme stock energy here, doesn't it? It feels like GameStop, but on an astronomical scale.
Oh, definitely. The analysts we're reading all admit that the valuation defies traditional metrics. You look at a price-to-earnings ratio, a PE ratio, and even with Starlink's impressive profits, $1.5 trillion it's rich.
It's priced for perfection, and then some.
It relies heavily on what they call the Mosconomy premium. You aren't just buying a share of a company's earnings, you're buying a ticket to the future. You're buying into a belief system.
But there are risks, huge, huge risks. Volatility is one, but there's also the key man risk. Musk is famously unpredictable.
And that's a real concern for institutional investors. But there is a key difference between SpaceX and Tesla, isn't there? I mean, if I get mad at Musk's tweets, I can go buy a Rivian. I can buy a Ford F-150 Lightning. I have other options.
Exactly. You have consumer choice in the electric car market. But SpaceX has now become critical infrastructure. The Department of Defense relies on them for national security launches. The global internet is increasingly reliant on Starlink.
It is much, much harder to boycott a utility that has no real alternative.
That makes them too big to fail in a very different way than the banks were back in 2008.
Right, they aren't just a bank holding money. They are the literal backbone of U.S. space superiority and a growing portion of global communications.
What about those persistent rumors of a triple merger? We talked about xAI merging into SpaceX, but is Tesla next? Is that the final endgame?
There's always speculation about it. A super conglomerate, SpaceX plus xAI plus Tesla, bringing the public car company into the private fold to create one unified entity that does everything from EVs to Mars colonization.
Would that even be legal? Merging a public automaker with a private rocket company?
It would be a legal and financial nightmare. The SEC would have an absolute field day with it. Tesla's shareholders would probably revolt if they found out their car company was suddenly underwriting the risk of Mars colonization.
So analysts are skeptical.
Very skeptical. But with Musk, you never say never.
So here we are, February 2026. We have a $1.25 trillion merger that creates this vertically integrated behemoth. We have a plan to put 1 million data centers in space. We have Amazon scrambling to even get off the launch pad. And we have a fleet of starships prepping for a do-or-die mission to Mars. It is a lot to process.
It really is. It feels like the inflection point of the entire decade is happening this year.
Let's try to summarize the key takeaways for you before we let you go. What are the big points to remember from all this?
Sure. I'd boil it down to 4 main points. First, the consolidation. The Musk empire is no longer a collection of interesting side projects. It is a single, vertically integrated behemoth valued at over $1 trillion. You have to think of it as an economic superpower in its own right now.
Okay.
Second, the pivot. The whole tech industry may be about to pivot from terrestrial compute to orbital solar-powered AI. This fundamentally changes the energy equation for technology. If it works, it solves the AI energy crisis. The gap. The infrastructure war in low Earth orbit is, for now, over. Starlink is running away with the lead, Amazon Leo is still trying to get off the starting line, and the EchoStar Spectrum deal makes catching up even harder.
And fourth, the big one.
And fourth, the deadline. The Mars 2026 window. It is a hard deadline set by gravity itself. Success or failure later this year will define the next 10 years of human spaceflight.
It's a pivotal year. I want to leave you with a thought that has been nagging me since I read that internal memo about the innovation engine.
Go for it.
We talked about vertical integration. Rockets, internet, AI, media. With SpaceX controlling the rockets, that's the transport. And the satellites, that's the internet. And the AI, that's the intelligence. And the public square, that's X.
It covers everything from atoms to bits to thoughts.
So when you look at that IPO, are investors buying a company, or are they buying shares in a breakaway civilization?
That is the $1.5 trillion question, isn't it?
And if the lowest cost compute really does move to space, if the brains of the AI are all orbiting above us, does Earth itself just become a dumb terminal for an orbital brain?
We might find out sooner than we think.
Something to mull over next time you look up at the night sky.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll be watching the ticker.
See you next time.